Everyone deserves emotional safety. I think the reason our society has reaped the consequences of psychopaths and narcissistic personality types, unhinged people running rampant in the government, institutions, and the society at large, all goes back to the breakdown of early childhood development, social skills, nurturing, and human kindness. Instead, we are now experiencing the consequences of a deranged social environment that has entered into end-time madness. It's a trend that will continue to expand before it finally goes into natural decline. Such is the nature of human existence in this temporal construct reality. I also want to say that the terms narcissist and psychopathy are used far too much these days. People will call someone who they disagree with or someone they don't like a narcissist. Remember that these terms refer to actual character traits that certain people exhibit, and there is a spectrum of psychopathy. To some extent, we all exhibit certain characteristics that can be considered narcissistic. But a true narcissist or psychopath is someone who lacks empathy. They cannot feel compassion or genuine caring or concern for the well-being of another person. I do believe that narcissism is increasing in our society, and there are probably certain chemical, social programming, and frequency influences that are contributing to this. When I studied martial arts, we were taught the importance of not getting sucked into anger or self-referencing, but to endeavor instead to remain in a state of receptive awareness of the situation. To master these qualities requires practice, meditation practice especially, and the right balance between emotional distance as well as empathy. So seek not to be too much in your own self-referencing, identifying only with your own problems, but try to be oriented toward achieving some worthwhile goal in the world, creative work, or service to others. Now, I became keenly aware of the necessity for developing emotional safety after a number of years in the spiritual dating marketplace. Instead of successfully cultivating true connections and friendships, for the most part, I was confronted and became aware of the sobering fact that relationships between men and women are definitely undergoing a tremendous transformation. Perhaps a half-century ago, human connections were less volatile and complicated like they are today, mostly because there was no social media apps, less manipulative liars who could get away with their abusive shenanigans. There was a higher ethical and moral atmosphere, and kids could roam freely around neighborhoods because most people watched out for one another. But for the most part, this is gone. We now live in a minefield of predatory, psychopathic perpetrators and deranged political and social immorality. At some point, it's all going to collapse, and the signs of it are happening even now. Despite our best intentions, no matter how much we may want to create a society of goodness and benevolence, the reality is we inevitably take on the shadow sides of others, aspects that we may attempt to push away and discard. Now, I attended a meeting of estranged parents a few years ago, elderly people who, for one reason or another, had all been cut off by their adult children. As I listened to these people share their laments and sadness, it was obvious. The common thread was they had no clue what happened. At some point, their children stopped communication, and often without explanation. I think it's a clear sign of social breakdown, family connections starting a free fall. And I do understand it because I too have seen the toxicity or the shadow characteristics in my own friends and family members as well. No matter how much we may endeavor to work on our dysfunctional issues or addictive personality traits, the fact is no one is immune from the effects of the dark side of humanity. So in this video, I want to share a simple message about the importance of cultivating emotional safety. It's a way to evolve spiritually and develop higher aspects of our individual wholeness. At some point, we must encourage and embody the skill of extending nurturing kindness and genuine helpfulness to others. But whatever edgy, reactive, triggering harshness that may remain inside of us, these things must inevitably be brought into awareness and reclaimed as part of our wholeness. And if we don't, it's just going to come back through others in our lives, circulating like unbridled phantoms again and again until we finally call these aspects back unto ourselves. The way to proceed in this process requires becoming aware of our own triggers, becoming familiar with the words and behaviors that others say or do that potentially cause the negative reactions within us. Those instances where we can't contain the charged energy of big feelings without lashing out. Herein is the importance of nurturing the valuable skill of being willing to sit with our big feelings, retreating into stillness and silence, or even nature, all with the intention to absorb or even reclaim our own inert darkness until the charge naturally begins to dissipate. Rather than reacting unconsciously or flying off the handle out of fear-based reactivity, we can choose to learn instead to wait out the rushing emotional torrent. This is something that is probably best done alone and in silence. After that wave passes through us, then it may prove useful to confront the issue with the other person directly. But you can do so with gentleness by bringing up the questionable issue calmly and simply stating the facts. For example, "Hey, you know when you said or did such and such, it really made me feel uncomfortable. I want you to know that that's not in alignment with what I value or what I'm looking for in my life. But if that is in alignment for you, that's fine." Responding with clear boundaries in this way, without accusing, without blaming or shaming the other, is a much better way of drawing around yourself the level of emotional and psychological safety needed for fostering authentic and supportive relationships. The trouble is, we're not taught this kind of direct skill of communication. The problem that I've experienced in relationships, especially in attempting to talk out a grievance or a problematic issue, is that it genuinely brings about defensiveness and reactivity. There was a therapist that I knew once who said, "In intimate relationships, talking is overrated." What he means is, if you're in a relationship with someone where repeating patterns keep coming up again and again, that's definitely a sign that the relationship is not in alignment with the same goals or values. In my opinion, there's not much hope that a relationship like that will ever change or improve. So one must ask themselves, what's the benefit? What's the payoff for me remaining in a relationship with this person? It may be clear at that point there isn't one. I recently watched a powerfully moving documentary called Arctic Daughter by Gene Aspen and Tom Irons. I really recommend you watch this. What impressed me most of all is the level of mature connections this couple lived. Despite harsh winters and the wildness of nature, they consistently were able to sustain a gentle, kind, and nurturing relationship. Live your best life, surrounded by supportive, kind, and nurturing connections, those that offer you emotional safety and where you can extend the same. Peace be with you.